This is the Aftermarket Radio Network. Carm Capriato here, the pioneer of automotive aftermarket podcasts, bringing you another great episode with real stories that might just change your business. Hey, when was the last time you thought about your business being audited? You know, the proverbial, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help type of audit. Well, they are very real, and we hear of stories and fines that get levied because we are not paying attention to specifically wage and hour laws. If you thought about it more often, you would be taking all of the precautions to avoid penalties and fines. Now, this episode is all about an audit and how to play by the rules. Real world stuff here. Now, don't wait until the Department of Labor calls. Take action to ensure that your business is conforming to the law. Thanks to our partners, Apex and Shopware, for providing you this episode. You know, Apex 2021 is in the record books, and Apex, they did a great job, and they lived up to presenting leading-edge technology from suppliers, but they did a great job of showcasing emerging tech of tomorrow. You have plenty of time for 2022. November 1st through the 3rd, 2022. Get that on your calendar. Apex now more than ever. Hey, here's something to think about. How often do your advisors play phone tag? Every ring, every voicemail. It's time ticking on a stalled job. Shopware's digital communication is really as easy as the customer just clicks yes. Find out more on the web at getshopware.com. Hey, a warm welcome to, oh my, Mike, you've been on the show, I think, more than anybody this year. I don't know if there's an award that you get or something.
I don't know. I think I just enjoy, we just enjoy one another, Carm. I think that's just it. And just talking about, I think our passions are parallel, run a parallel line, you know. If we were train tracks, I'd be on the left, I'm left-handed. You'd be on the right. Okay, we'd be running down the track. And
I'd have to use my left hand to grab your right hand. Interesting.
Yeah, or something.
Mike Davidson did a bunch of great episodes with us on leadership. Thank you so much for those. They were excellent. Also with us is Brian Weeks. Hello, Brian.
Carm, Mike, good to see you guys today.
Been a while since you've been on the show, man. How's business?
Extraordinary. Things are going real well, and I really have to thank, again, both of you guys for having me on.
Just send the check. That's all. All you have to do.
Yeah. Email address to me. I got it. It's in the mail.
Make the thank you as big as you want it.
That's right.
I want to tell the audience that this show is all about wage and hour. Don't yawn. Don't turn us off.
Really?
Because we just may save you more money than you can imagine. Because later in the episode, Brian and Mike are going to show you what a penalty could be if you don't play nice with the government, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Brian gets a ring, ring. Hi, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help phone call.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's definitely not something that you wake up in the morning, you go to work, you're laying things out, have a cup of coffee and say, this looks like a good day for the old wage and hour to give us a call. That's not how this happens. I mean, they come out of nowhere. The least amount of expectation in your mind is for wage and hour to just give you a friendly little ring and state who they are, and you panic.
So before we even get into this great story, which this really is, you know, I wouldn't do a podcast if there wasn't some value for the industry because, you know, I'm all about advancing the aftermarket. There's this book, and I'm not doing it justice in the picture here, but yeah, Brian has it. Mike has his copy, Wage and Hour Compliance from Mike Davidson. If you don't have this book, which is the shortest read, you know, it's one of those 10-minute reads. And there's so much content in it. All the stuff that you put up on your website will help you run a better business and stay compliant, but do what's right for the employee too.
I think you really put that well, Carm. It's like it is a short read, but that was 365 days worth of work put into a 10-minute read, a 10 or 15-minute read. And what motivated me to even put this together was having left a conference and having more questions than I did answers on wage and hour. And I just like, there's got to be specific answers, not for every small business in America, but for the automotive industry specifically. And that's what I went on the search for. And so I spent that year with Department of Labor and attending a boot camp with them. And I hired a wage and hour attorney to help me navigate the 10,000 pages of Federal Labor Standard Act, the FLSA, and navigating all of that, and then put together a webinar on wage and hour and invited, you're not going to believe this, I invited the Department of Labor to attend the webinar and some other shop owners. And because I wanted, it was Adrena that came, and Adrena is in the book, and she's willing to help us in our industry. And the purpose of her attendance was to make sure my content was accurate. So a lot of checks and balances for me in putting this book together for content, because I knew how critical it was. And the funniest thing about that webinar is, how you, at the end of a webinar, you ask, if anybody have any questions, there was probably 7 or 8 shop owners that nobody had any questions because the Department of Labor was in the room. Hello, my name is John Doe. I am not from this country. I have a question about my shop. And nobody had any questions.
It's amazing how we feel when, and Brian, please tell us the story here in a moment, how you actually felt violated, maybe. Who knows? But by the way, Brian Weeks is from ATC Auto Center in Augusta, Georgia. I forgot to talk about your great company out there, but I remember being in business and a friend of mine had an audit, and it was a huge number. It was just off the charts huge. And the reason that we don't want you to leave this episode or maybe listen to it twice or get Mike's book is to understand, let's just give the guys an incentive. Let me see, incentive on top of overtime pay, on top of this and on top of that. It's the law has a lot of spider webs, if you will, inside of how we run and pay our people. And that all of that has to be compliant to the Department of Labor law, which, Brian, I just can't wait for you to get into because it's a great story. So what happened, really, I know you got that phone call in the morning that kind of disturbed your day, but what did you do next?
Well, first of all, you said it's a great story because you're on the other side of the fence. That was so. Let's just lay the law down right there. No, so initially, what took place? We've got 2 locations, and we have an office manager. She was actually employed with our dad when they owned the business, and my brother and I came in and purchased the business from them back in '99. So she was actually the saving grace that came with the business. She was the office manager. She handles the books, keeps all of us straight. I mean, if truth be told, she's the boss, what it comes down to. So they called our Augusta store first and asked to speak to me, and she happened to answer the telephone. And she's one of those that she can go from 0 to the building's on fire in 2 seconds. And she panicked. So she stops and she tells the lady, was like, well, I've got to talk to Brian. So she said, I'll get him to call you. So she hangs up the phone. So it was immediately hot potato off of her onto me. So she called me, literally in a panic. Can I talk to you for a minute? I was like, sure, Kathleen, what's up? And she told me, I just got off the phone with a wage and hour. I've heard you talk about them. This is not a good thing. This is like the IRS. And I'm like, well, all right, hold on, wait a minute. So the first thing that happened to me was my anxiety started going through the roof. But I was like, all right, wait, hold on, time out. Calm down. You're talking over yourself. Just calm down. Tell me what she said. Well, I didn't ask her anything, but I've got her name and her telephone number right here, and you need to call her. I was like, okay, got it. Don't worry about it, Kathleen. It's going to be all right. Just calm down. So I got off the phone with her and came back in the office and sat down, and immediately so many things started going through my head. The very first thing that flashed in before my eyes was Mike standing on stage in New Orleans at the Pro Service kickoff meeting in 2018 talking about wage and hour. Anxiety through the roof. So I'm like, okay, all right, wait a minute. I digested the situation that we were in, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, the one thing that the lady can't eat me. So I'm just going to call her, see what she wants. I'm going to be very careful about what I ask and just see how this is going to play out. So I called her. In my mind is you can handle this a lot of different ways. One, you can go on the defensive and be like, why are you calling me? I didn't do anything wrong. I've got too many things going on. Or you can treat this as if it were a customer coming in the door. And quite frankly, go through a sales cycle. Let's create rapport to begin with. Let's bring this into light of saying, look, this is no big deal. What can I help you with? Even though right behind that was, what are we going to do? On the outward side of it, it was stay calm and just talk to her. I mean, at the end of the day, she's a human being. She gets up, she puts her pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. Let's just see what she needs. And we talked a good bit. I tried to lighten the conversation mostly, and just ask very few questions. I think I'd said before, I felt like I was in a deposition. It's like, yes, no, okay, all right, but be pleasant. And, the first conversation went well. And I just told her, I said, just give me a week or so to digest what's going on. Email me a list. And we kind of corresponded like that. And I got off the phone with her. So that was the initial first hour of panic.
Mike, Brian, do you know if the government people that need to do these kinds of audits, no matter what, are trained to read people, offensive, defensive, to the point where they know how further they need to dig?
That's a good question. I really hadn't thought about it like that. But Mike, we run personality tests on people that were looking at joining our organization. Why wouldn't the government put people into place and have probing questions to find out what kind of personality is on the other end of the line?
Yeah, if they're sitting across from a dominant person, they're going to say, yes, no, I'm out of time. They're going to know that they have a challenge on their hands in that particular regard,
Yeah, they are. They'll ask questions that could allow them to sort of open a door to another question, would allow them to continue down, a path. Even how you have your files organized can make a difference when they start looking into files that might cause them to look at other files.
So in your story, Brian, I remember Mike being on stage in 2018. So right away, you had a call a friend moment there, right?
It was, and I literally got off of the telephone with that lady and said, okay, where's Mike's phone number? I've got to call Mike. So I sent him an email and was like, I need to talk like now. I don't really know what you're doing, but now, please.
That would be a good time.
That would be a really good time. Yeah. And what he did offer was a calm. You talk about the book, and Mike, you say it's a 10 or 15 minute read. It's easy. It is. And what I did on the front side of that was, like everybody else, I picked the book up, I read it, was like, yeah, okay, I know this stuff. When the phone call happened, and after I got off the phone with you, I went home that night, I got the book, and I literally read word for word every single page of it. It was astounded at really how much information is in there in that 365 days you talked about being compiled in just a few pages. There's an enormous amount of information in there that will help guide you through a process like this.
Let me not minimize the 10-minute read. Let me say that this is an actionable book. And literally everything that you are reading in this is, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. It could take you a month to, if you will, implement the stuff. How good are your job descriptions and the agreements that you have with people on how you're going to pay them?
Yeah, and it seems to mean a lot to the Department of Labor, Wage and Hour, that your people understand that agreement. It's not just something they signed off on, but that they have a really clear understanding of it. And so one of the things that you find when you get the book is that link to job descriptions. And I thought, well, how can I make sure people understand what is important to be in their job description? So as you're on the website, you can download all these job descriptions for your businesses that are that are specific to our industry. And then I just bold printed the things that the Department of Labor wants to see in a job description. And so now you can tailor it to whatever you want, but just make sure those bold print items are in your job description. And that helps. That sort of gives you they're paying attention because they don't see that in job descriptions when their auditors are reading that. But when they see the words that they want to see and they're looking for and they're actually in the job description, it means a lot to that auditor that says, okay, these people are on their game. It's about looking very professional, that you are paying attention. It's not just, you're not flying by the seat of your pants on compensation, people.
Don't ignore this stuff if you're a business owner, period. I don't care if it's and I know that people who own a cleaning business, a laundry, they're not listening to my show. But the point is that there's so many struggling small businesses that are discovering my podcast and are listening and saying, I met him at Apex this past week. Thank you for all this great advice, all the great insight, and for advancing the aftermarket. You got to pay attention to this. If you don't have the things that we're talking about here, forget an audit. You may never get audited, but you still, to run a great business, have to do 80% of what's in the book.
I think one of the things, and I think Brian alluded to this, is like when you spend some time with Adrena with the Department of Labor, and she's allowed me to put her contact information in the book. One, you can call her anonymously if you want to, but she is the nicest lady on the planet, when it comes to wage and hour and Department of Labor. I mean, and she explained it to me this way. She said, just think about it, Mike. She says, if everyone in your industry were playing by the same rules, how that gives you equity is a word that's come to my mind amongst your employees, where it's fair between whether you're working here or some other shop. It's fair if everyone's following the same rules, and that's their goal is everybody following the same rules. And so I went on that discovery to find, well, what are the rules? What are the rules for us? Because they're different than they are for dealerships. And that's where I think a lot of us have followed that path of, well, this is how they pay technicians at dealerships, and we can do the same. And no, you can't. They have an exemption we don't have.
So before we go further, as I want to continue to drag my audience through to the end, Mike is going to give you an example of how a 50-cent an hour mistake with a 10-employee company could turn into the kind of fine that could shut your business. Brian, what fears became reality for you?
For us, there were so many questions that we had. I talked with my brother that night, and we talked about the what ifs and what if they do this? What if they do that? How are we doing this? How are we doing it? At the end of the day, talking with Adrena was one of the biggest helps that we had. It was like she was giving us the playbook of how this was going to work and allowed us to ask the questions that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable asking the auditor, and being able to role play. And through that, uncovered one area that, quite frankly, we weren't doing right. An example was we had a person handling our parts at our Augusta location. And he was being paid hourly, which is fine. We're open 45 plus hours a week. We're doing time and a half where everything's rocking along. It's great. And we were having a trouble with parts returns and warranties. We weren't getting our money back for those items. So my brother and I designed a pay plan that says, all right, well, listen, once a month, total income back on parts returns and warranties, we'll give you a certain percentage of it. All right, no big deal. It's just a bonus. It's a bonus for somebody to do a good job. We were not taking that bonus and plugging it into that payroll calculator that Mike created, and that opened the door for a potential problem. And that was uncovered when I was talking with Adrena. And the one thing that we found was, I said, look, we didn't know. We really didn't know. And as anything through life, you gain education in a lot of different forms. And what we showed was the actual progression of the learning process through how we were doing things. And that was one that we didn't know until we were at that pro service meeting, and Mike talked with us about that in 2018, that we came back and started implementing. And, with that being an open, possible, potential issue, we immediately talked with our auditor and said, listen, there's a problem here that I feel like we've learned from and we're doing the correct thing, but you help me. Open, honest, transparent. That was, I think, the key to us dealing with the auditor. So when you talk about issues and problems, that was an area that we just didn't know. We learned, we implemented change, and we showed that progression. And I think that's what kept us from actually having any type of penalties or fines against that area.
So, Brian, I think you bring up such a great point about something as small as putting an incentive on top of an hourly wage that has overtime. That's where a friend of mine years ago paid, I think, a $30,000 fine because of the failure to calculate that inside the bonus. So, and guess what, guys? Anybody who's growing a great company today has great incentives, great bonus plans that could be at risk of fines.
You're trying to add some incentive for people and pay them more for doing a good job. You just have to be careful, between discretionary and non-discretionary bonuses. Everything has to be accounted for and put into, if you are over 40 hours, time and a half into that calculator.
Carm here, and coming up, Mike Davidson explains how 50 cents could turn into a $62,000 fine. Be careful. Are you stuck in small ticket rut? Well, that's exactly what happened to Dominic Linden and the team at Autobahn Service in Sheffield, Massachusetts. With the busy day-to-day bustle of shop operations, they didn't have time to chase customers for approval. They were caught in a cycle of low AROs, and they were losing those higher ticket jobs to competitors. Audubon Service was introduced to Shopware, and just a few months after going live, the shop was so busy with new jobs that they actually needed to lower their car count. They are now able to be selective with the services they take on, and profits have never been better. Additionally, by tapping into Shopware's digital estimating capabilities, Audubon Service has noticed an 89% average approval rate from customers. Their average RO before Shopware was $450, and now it's up to $700. Now, that's a 55% increase. Do the math. Reach your customers faster and get approved dollars up. GetShopware.com. Carm here. Well, I can't say enough about the quality of instructors and the high level of technical and management training that was offered inside Repair Shop HQ during Apex 2021. Hey, it's in the record books, but the great news is that show organizers for Apex 2022 are hard at work again, assembling the best and the brightest instructors and the most timely and needed training for shop owners and technicians. And now watch for a robust schedule of training and product demos on topics such as engine performance diagnostic strategies, how to be an effective leader, wheel alignment and ADAS calibrations, controller area networks, and using social media to grow your business, just to name a few. With this caliber of training, make sure Apex 2022 is on your calendar. Now, that's November 1st through the 3rd in Las Vegas. And together, let's make 2022 the year of growing sales, profits, and productivity for your business. Listen here for more Apex 2022 training and registration information. Are they really hunting really hard to find fines, or they just want to see that you're compliant? Or does that actually answered my question, right? If you're compliant, you've got no fines.
I think it's a little of both, Carm, where they pick an industry. They either begin to hear complaints from an industry or see things from an industry, go, well, let's spend the next couple of years looking at as many people as we can in the industry to see if what we've discovered is true, if that's truly happening, so we can begin to correct that. And so then there is a target. There is a target for a particular industry. And so the automotive industry has been on their radar for the last couple of years. And that's why guys like Brian and Gary have gotten calls, because they're after the industry, not specifically potential business. But every single business in the United States can get audited by just a phone call from an employee. That's all it takes. And they have to investigate. They cannot not investigate you. They will investigate you, and they will audit you.
Brian, what did they find?
Let's go to the end of the process. Our fines were zero. We had just a couple of parting gifts that she called it. Said, listen, these were some areas that we saw there could be potential for, fines. But because you showed a progression and because you kept impeccable notes, we know that you're doing the right thing and doing what you can to take care of people. And, from that aspect, when you look at our payroll, all the way down to one of the things that helped us was, I gave her more than she could ever imagine needing. But when we do payroll once a week, let's just say you have a technician that wanted to take leave on a Friday to go do something, to go on vacation. At the end of that week, you put a note in there, hey, so-and-so left at 4:30, going on vacation to the mountains, doing a great job. When they see that on a weekly basis, and you may not keep a note for every single week. Let's just say you had a situation to where somebody came in, they're having a problem, you had a disagreement, you worked it out, it didn't have anything to do with pay, yet you made a note on it. The more notes, the more of the process that you go through that you can document, the better the auditor can understand how you operate your business. And when they see things like that and know that, hey, they may have left, you may have a service advisor that has been doing such a really good job, and you just say, hey, why don't you take the afternoon off? I'll cover your spot, and you pay them the rest of the afternoon. Well, make a note of that. Put a note of it, and then that way it says, hey, I paid them for the whole week. I didn't dock their pay or do anything like that. When you show that type that you care about your people, and this isn't about money, it's about taking care of people, then the auditor begins to understand who you really truly are without having to be standing and living your life for you.
That causes them to not dig any deeper than they need to, because they know the potential of finding something is a lot less because of your character.
Guys, I have a question about training pay. Is that a gray area that we need to be careful of?
Yeah. So what I learned in that year with the Department of Labor is training pay. It comes back to someone being hourly, and so there's some specific guidelines when it comes to training. If the training has anything to do with your business and them learning something that benefits your business, then they are to be compensated for that training. And the great thing is that you can have a training wage that's different than your normal wage. All right. So if you're paying a technician $35, $40 an hour, you don't have to pay the training pay $35 or $40 an hour. You can actually pay training pay at minimum wage. But it has to go in the overall bucket for their pay that week, including contributing to any overtime pay. That's the part where we miss. The guys go to class at night, and that's not considered. We don't count that as hours in the building, but it is hours in the building. It is their total hours that is compensable, because they are doing something that's benefiting your organization. And so even if it's they're benefiting themselves, if you're benefiting, then you have to pay them.
Guys, look, I have this really cool, neat chat feature on my website. And my lead service advisor says, hey, don't worry about it. I'll monitor this no matter where I am. So I'm at home. I'm the guy. It's 8:30. Something comes through and someone wants to set an appointment and find out something, and I'm doing that stuff. I'm salaried, by the way. Is that a problem?
It's actually not a problem if we're talking about a service advisor, because they do fall under the 7I exemption. So you can pay them that salary, or you can pay them a commission and for the work that they do. But the problem is when a technician who's, by the way, in the independent industry should be represented hourly. If any of your hourly employees, if they're on break for more than 20 minutes, you don't have to pay them. But if within that time frame you go and ask them a question about something, they're suddenly back on the clock and you have to pay them for that break.
So who hovers over and watches all of that stuff?
Nobody.
I thought that was the answer. So it's the do right rule that you're talking about here.
It is. It's just knowing and understanding. And so if you understand that the rules for automotive technicians for the independent automotive industry is different than the technician in the dealership, although they're doing the same job and everyone would take that, they have an exemption because they sell brand new cars that we don't have. And technicians do not deal directly with consumers. So that removes them from the commission definition. And so I took these documents, these fact sheets and these opinion letters from the Department of Labor, and they're on the website. When you purchase the book, you get a password to those documents now so that you can actually read them. And they're not a hard read. They're not forever, but they're very succinct specifically to the things that we deal with in our industry. And that was my goal, is making them very specific and digging out what do we do with hourly people, and what do we do with training, and how are they defining flat rate, that we've all heard that term. They've got opinion letters in there that are very helpful to help me understand. I go, this has got to go on the site, because this will really help you understand. And that's part of it. And you build it in the compensation package, and now it becomes the do right rules are part of the compensation package. You build it in there, and now it happens within your organization. You don't have to worry about it going wrong.
Mike, thank you so much for the year's worth of research to write this book. I can't imagine anybody who runs a shop in North America, well, Canada is different, but in the United States that doesn't have this book on their desk, doesn't read it, doesn't get on your website, industryessentials.net, and get compliant. At least learn, know, and understand the laws. The 4 steps to protect yourself during an audit. Now, I pulled this right from the book, Mike. Written job descriptions, which are in the book. Written compensation packages. I think is that on the website?
Yes, the compensation packages are on there, and job descriptions are on there. And
the regular rate calculator, which is a spreadsheet, which I think is the glorious part of this whole thing, right, Brian?
Yes, absolutely. We use it religiously.
That's it. And then the 7-day time record, Mike, explain that one.
Yeah, so the Department of Labor requires you to have a time record for every employee, regardless of how they're paid, of every 7 days of, and think of it this way, any activity that contributes to the benefit of your company should be documented that they spent their life doing that. And so, and it has to be done in 7-day windows. It doesn't mean you have to pay every 7 days. It doesn't matter when you pay or even how you pay, they'll tell you, right? But that 7-day time frame is the documented window. And they will also tell you that you do not have to have them sign, but I say, yes, have employees sign a timesheet that says, these are the hours that I worked that particular week, and do it at the end of every 7 days so they can review it and remember it. And remember, oh yeah, I forgot to clock out when I went to lunch that day, or whatever it is. They are more likely to remember. So 7 days it doesn't matter if it's Tuesday to Monday. It doesn't matter if it's Thursday to Wednesday. It doesn't matter. But it has to be indicated as a 7-day time period, and your time has to be stamped in a 7-day time period. So that's the emphasis I make on that.
Listening to Mike helped you, final result. You walked away with 0, huh?
We did. And, one of the other areas, just like Mike was talking about, that 7-day window and timesheets, even though we didn't have people that signed the timesheets, because of the notations that we made on a weekly basis, she took a sample, and that sample, and, somebody being there only 35 hours that week, with the notes and the samples, validated what we were paying. So, that was a crucial thing. That was one of the takeaways that she said, look, if you're going to have a time card that's going to be changed, like you said, somebody, I forgot to clock out. Hey, can you clock, put me out for this time the next day? That can pose an issue if you're not good about keeping notations.
Are the notes kept on a, if you will, your payroll website? Are they kept in an employee file? Where are those notes?
For us, we keep it on Google Drive. So every week we create payroll, and every single week we've got documentation. And it's accessed by, our office manager that runs the payroll, myself, my brother. When we sit down and have meetings with any of our team members, we'll show them, hey, this is where this is. Remember, man, we gave you a raise on this day because, man, you're doing such a good job. You took training here. And we use that to kind of go over the year with them.
So this is a document per employee that you have, that you share in the company, and you use Google Drive to do it. It's a page. So anything that comes up that a supervisor uncovers that could have something to do with pay, labor, time in, time out, they're going to complete or at least make an entry.
Yeah, and what we do is when we finalize our payroll every single week, we scan it all into the cloud so that it ends up being a PDF form, so no other changes are made when it's finalized, and it's all there for us, and then it's saved that way, including the payroll calculator and any documentation, all the things that Brian's talking about. Everything has to do with payroll is named a file for that week, and then it's saved for that week and scanned.
Mike, I'm going to put you up to a challenge right now. You know a ton of people in this industry. You're a part-time elite coach. Just so happy I met you all those years ago. We've done a lot of great things together. So you're connected. You're in the know. out of all the people that you know, or maybe you can give me a snapshot of the industry, what's the percentage of the people in our service industry that would be compliant like Brian?
I would say this, of the people that I know, especially with Elite Pro Service and the people that have been under the, we'll call it the care and protection of the Elite organization for many years, I would say that a good number of them are in compliance. But, you know, I even saw recently on one of the groups that I'm involved in on Facebook where a shop owner still believed with all of his heart that a 1099 pay to technicians was just fine. And that anybody that thought any different than that was weird. And I thought, boy, he has no idea how exposed he is. And I think there's probably a lot more in the industry than we can realize, because a lot of people, a lot of shop owners have come from being technicians. You know, they come from the dealership world and they know how they were paid and what they did, and they just transfer that information over. And when you're not intentional about a specific area of your business, that you go and take a deep dive to figure out what's right and what's not right, then you'll just take whatever you think is right, which can be, you know, your morals will make that determination for you. And that can all be good. But if you don't know the rules, it's easy to make a mistake.
And then you become a keyboard warrior, tell people that your rule is right. Frankly, you don't know what you don't know, which is the reason for networking and coaching and consulting and really good, great peer networks. And especially getting a story like Brian's told and promoting the fact that you've got a book that will help so many people out in the industry. And I'm not here to sell books, and Mike, trust me, is not here to sell books. He's not. But it's the story behind the fact that wage an hour could really hurt you. So what kind of hurt, Mike? Let's talk about the fines at a 50 cent an hour issue that people could potentially be hurt if the audit came. Well, we found a little tiny mistake here, 50 cents an hour.
What the Department of Labor will do, and just to the extent that they can do that, and I have examples in my book of shops, because I went on a hunt, and I'm going, okay, so how real is this? And I found 2 companies within the state of Arkansas that experienced these fines, and that's where we got the numbers from, right? Okay, so a 50 cent mistake. So you make a 50 cent mistake because you don't figure overtime correctly, that bonus Brian's talking about. You've paid them their hourly wage, and they've done whatever they've done, and then you threw another, $100 bonus in that week for that 40 hours but they worked 40 hours. So you paid them their 40 hours at their rate, and then you gave them another $100. Well, if you paid them their $10 an hour, okay, and they work for 40 hours and they work 45 hours, all right, so you're paying them that in their overtime. But then you paid them an additional $100 bonus. We see that $100 has to go in the bucket to figure their total pay, so that you then determine what their overtime rate is, because their overtime rate's going to increase slightly by, we'll say, 50 cents. All right. So we're going to take that 50 cents and we're going to look at, now we're going to open the door to all of your employees, and we're going to look at every one of them that you've given a bonus for and what was that done for. And then they're going to multiply that times 52 if you paid every week, right? And then they can go back over 3 years. And so the equation that I put together was a real equation that occurred to a company that made a 50 cent mistake, and their fine was $62,000 when they were done with the audit. I mean, it was an honest mistake, right? They didn't, sort of like what Brian said, we threw the bonus in here. We wanted to incentivize them, all that, but it wasn't in the bucket to determine what their actual overtime rate should be, because that bonus was a part of their total compensation for the hours they were doing something for you. And so you have to make that a part of the overtime compilation.
I love the example. You came up with 31,200 times 2, which is 62,400. And here's, hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. The fine is double the violation plus any other penalties that maybe I want to enforce.
Whenever they figure that in that example, that 31.2, that's what the fine ended up being. But then they double it to cover as a penalty. All right. And then if there's anything else they discover along the way, well, they can add that to it.
I don't know, slap upside the head, dunk me in a cold pool of water. Hopefully we have brought I think, an important episode to the industry. Brian, thank you for sharing your great story, because it is a good story, because you came out unscathed, right?
Yes.
And frankly, the story is so good because you did a lot of things right. You didn't become defensive. You wanted to help. What can I do? You picked up the phone. You called a friend, a lifeline.
That's right.
And you got the book and you read it. So, and you were doing everything right. I mean, you weren't at risk. The point of it is it's the story behind the story that I think matters. That anyone as successful as Brian in an industry that they want to maybe target gets picked up and caught. Because think of the small business people in every realm of our commerce that's at risk.
I can't dismiss the fact that you hear about technicians still today talking about not being paid fairly or not, they don't understand the compensation package. They don't even know what they're making an hour. They have no idea. But under the guidelines that we've put together in the wage and hour book, it's going to help you really be able to communicate to your technicians what they're actually making for every hour that they're contributing to your organization. And I think that's important when they go to look for another job or they're looking to go outside the industry. You're able to give them actual real numbers on their paycheck that shows them what they're making an hour. That flat rate pay that is out there, is still very prevalent in our industry, is so misrepresentative of what they're actually being paid per hour that they're working and contributing to your business. The guidelines that we put together in wage and hour will help you do that. And so I think it brings clarity. Clarity is such a beautiful word, because clarity removes confusion. And so if we bring clarity to our technicians and how they're getting paid, they're looking at a guy like Brian and they're going, man, I work for a great guy. Why would I ever even think about leaving this facility or this organization and going somewhere else? Won't even think twice about it. It means so much. So there's so much more behind the scenes and having a good job description and a written compensation package and using the payroll calculator to show actually what they're making per hour, because they need to know that. They don't need to be confused.
Right.
And guys, bonuses and incentives are becoming the state of the art in our businesses today, exposing our financial statements, working with everyone so that we can reach our goals, and then bringing people in on the success of reaching those goals. We're doing more and more every day, which means we've got to stay compliant. Hey, this was great. Thank you. I hope we rocked my listeners' world. Without a doubt. Mike Davidson from Parkway Automotive in Little Rock, Arkansas, and, of course, industryessentials.net. Thanks for writing that book. And, of course, Mike's been on. He's got a great apprentice program. You can find all of that on industryessentials.net. I so believe in your apprentice program. Thank you for having that.
Thanks, Carm.
And Brian Weeks, ATC Auto Center, Augusta, Georgia, 2 locations. Thanks for sharing your story, man.
Thank you. Really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian, for making time today for us. And so hopefully we're able to help. Yeah.
Hopefully this will help.
Yeah. That's what we want. We want to help as many as we can.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.